Salvete omnes, and welcome to No Friends Gaming, because every day can be toga day when you have no friends to judge your appearance. Today we're looking at the definitive trading in the Mediterranean game, Concordia by Matt Gertz. Do note that you will need the expansion Concordia Solitaria to play this solo or cooperatively. We'll start with strategy for the multiplayer competitive game, then discuss the approach to dealing with Contrarius, the solo AI. So let's get this toga party started! The first player typically leads with Architect, and the other players should usually copy that with Diplomat, since it's so important to build in the cities close to the capital early, before other players do and make them more expensive. It's better to build more houses at a time if possible, because that's more efficient, so you'll often build in one brick city and one non-brick city, the most allowed by your starting resources and 2 colonist movement. Your second play could then be Prefect to replenish your resources, or Senator if you have the right resources left over, plus any produced by earlier players' prefects, to grab 2 cheap cards from the display. Follow Prefect with Senator, another Prefect, or Mercator to curate your resources for future turns. Or if your second play was Senator, follow that with Prefect, then another Prefect, or Mercator. Try to gather enough resources and sestertii to Architect again before your first Tribune. If you diplomated the first player's Architect, you'll have your own card to use. Unless the first player manages to pick up a second Architect card, they'll have to rely on diplomating someone else's, or they may simply have to Tribune first. In any case, make sure you save up 1 food and tool for your eventual Tribune action so you can deploy a Colonist, which is crucial to empower future Architects. With every card play, your main concern is to maximize efficiency by doing as much as you can at once. With that in mind, let us now explore the various cards in the game. When you play Architect, you will usually want to build as many new houses as you have colonists. Earlier in the game, there are 2 main philosophies for effective building placement. Either you could monopolize a province, ideally one with 3 cities, by building in all of them before most other players can get there, thereby amassing a large bounty of resources with Prefect. Or you could share a province by building where somebody else has more houses or more valuable houses, such that they'd still be incentivized to produce there, netting you resources for free. Later in the game, you will want to spread out to maximize your Saturnus score and prioritize building in locations matching your Minerva specialists. When prefecting, you will naturally tend to produce in regions containing more of your houses than other players, unless you really need a specific resource right away. But don't be deterred from producing where other players are present, unless they clearly have a stronger incentive to produce there themselves. Especially at higher player counts where more opponents won't benefit, it's far better to reap profits along with an opponent than to hamstring yourself by refusing to produce. Of course, look out for opportunities when your opponent's storehouses are too full to gain everything. Using Prefect for the cash bonus is not so efficient, compared with the value of goods from producing, until around 9 or more coins are showing. Yes, it reactivates the provinces so you can produce again, but that helps everyone else too. You should value taking the cash bonus more highly if you have already produced at your more lucrative provinces while others have not. And you could take it tactically, even for less money, if you need it to afford an imminent action, typically for Architect. I generally use Mercator to sell one type of resource and buy another. You can gather excess resources of high value, cloth or wine, to sell all at once, then buy plenty of new resources to last you for multiple future actions. For example, you could buy enough food or brick to use with your next Architect, while still having enough to purchase cards with Senator. Mercator is great for its flexibility in getting you just the right combination of resources. However, you should try not to use it too often, since it gets you less raw value than other cards such as Prefect. You should almost always purchase 2 cards at a time with Senator. Obviously, go for the cheaper cards to the left of the market if they suit you, but don't be afraid to splurge on powerful cards soon after they appear, such as Consul, which helps you get more cards, or a Specialist. Gaining more cards is especially important for scoring, so you should aim to play Senator every time before you use Tribune, except perhaps the first run through your hand when resources are tighter. And you should similarly prioritize using Consul if you happen to pick one up. Consider which gods will score better for you given your current plans. For example, Saturnus will do better on larger maps where there are more provinces. If you have Mason, then you might not want Jupiter cards as much since you'll be looking to build a lot of brick houses, which they don't score for. If you get a Colonist, then try to pick up lots of extra Mars cards, which will score you a healthy 12 points each once you have all your colonists deployed. And if the cards are depleting quickly because other players are gaining lots of them, then Mercurius and Mars are really nice to help you score well without having to build a lot of houses. Specialists can be particularly valuable on larger maps where there are more cities of their type, and can be a great way to gain resources later in the game when there are more players sharing your provinces, making Prefect production worse. If you happen to get a hold of Mason and Farmer, you should try to rush the endgame by also getting a second Architect and building all 15 of your houses as quickly as possible. Other players can slow this down by building in food and brick cities first, thereby making them more expensive and less convenient to access if colonists are blocking the routes. Try to have a food and tool stored up for whenever you use Tribune, particularly the first time round, but possibly also the second, so you can deploy a colonist and have more reach with Architect. Use Tribune as sparingly as possible, but if the remaining cards in your hand are inefficient, then use it to pick up your more impactful cards, getting to them sooner. If you pick up a colonist card, then you should try to get out all 6 of your colonists to maximize your Mars score, saving up multiple food and tools to use the top action just once. But you might hold back one colonist to deploy with a later Tribune, since using too many resources to pay for a bunch of colonists can really hamper your tempo, leaving you with less wealth to build new houses with all those new colonists. It's particularly helpful to get a land colonist at a house more easily accessed by sea, from which it can move to nearby landlocked cities. As mentioned, Diplomat can be used after the first player to copy their Architect. But beyond that, look for opportunities to copy cards that you don't have access to, such as the 5 Sestertii Mercator, or the Colonist card to deploy colonists on your front lines. Or use it to copy cards that you'd like to play an additional time before you Tribune, such as Prefect if you're lacking resources, Architect if you have too many resources, or especially Senator to garner more points. It is not vital to take the Concordia card to win the game, but it's usually good to go for if the opportunity arises. If you sense that someone else is going to get Concordia soon, then try to set up your resources to be able to build as much as you can with Architect on your final turn, or to pick up cards with Senator if they finish on houses. When playing Concordia Solitaria against Contrarius, note that certain cards will benefit him disproportionately compared to you. The worst defender is Tribune, already one of your weakest actions, that nets him a house and an extra card or colonist. Mercator is another relatively weak card for you that gets Contrarius a house. We want to limit the number of cities he builds in, since each one gains him points for most of his cards. So play Mercator and Tribune as few times as possible. You should generally play Tribune only twice before triggering the end of the game. On the other hand, Architect and Senator are pretty good plays. You're giving Contrarius a card or a house for each one respectively, but they are also the most impactful cards for your own scoring. And Prefect will help you generate the resources needed for your buildings and card acquisition. So you want to play that a lot too, it only nets Contrarius a couple of points at a time. With Diplomat, you should copy Contrarius' Senator card and his Prefect with Perfectus Magnus card. Control the end of the game so that you can build your 15th house first, or take the final personality card to claim the 7-point bonus from Concordia, which amounts to a 14-point swing against Contrarius. Very strong. In summary, set up your card plays so you can do as much as possible at a time. Build houses early before other players can get to them, and monopolize provinces so you can profit from your own Prefect, and share provinces to profit from others. Play Mercator and Tribune sparingly, particularly against Contrarius, but play Senator as often as you can, and focus on gaining gods that score better for you depending on the game state. And take the Concordia card in every game against Contrarius, or set up your resources to score as much as you can on your final turn once it is taken. So, we are now ready to go head-to-head against Contrarius at expert level. I will do a couple of run-throughs, the second one about a week later, which will include more expansions to spice things up. So, I'll see you in the next video!